Middle school students, this is our second week of video lessons and your second video for the week. This week we're going to be talking about some of the Native American tribes in Arizona and some of the first Native people to first settle in this area. One of the first settlers were the Mogollon people. So you want to say that for me once? Mogollon. Mogollon. It's a tongue twister. It's kind of hard to say. So bear with me. I'm going to probably mispronounce it a bunch of times, but stick with me. All right, the Mogollon were given their name by a Spanish governor more than 400 years ago. This was long after they disappeared from their homelands. So we're going to talk about the Mogollon people and some of their accomplishments. So what was the architecture like? Well, the Mogollons start out building pit houses and later built multi-storied buildings. They probably learned this from the ancient Puebloan people who were here before the Mogollon. What about farming? Well, they did some farming, but they didn't irrigate. So irrigation is when you build a water system that helps to bring water to the crops and to the plants if you're not near a river or a stream. They depended on hunting and gathering much more than the natives of the plateau or desert regions did. Okay? Think back from last week when we talked about the plateau and desert regions. How would that help the hunters and gatherers? How would it not help the hunters and gatherers, the climate of the area? Perhaps this was because there was more rain and plenty of wild game in the mountain region at that time. That would make sense. There's more wildlife and more resources in a mountain region. All right, although archaeologists haven't found much pottery where the main group of Mogollons once lived, they've restored a lot from one of their tribes, the Mimbres in New Mexico. The Mogollon made beautiful white pottery with black, perfectly shaped designs. So how did these people disappear? Well, archaeologists believe the ancient Puebloan people slowly overtook the Mogollons sometime between AD 900 and AD 1100. The two cultures finally merged into one. From then on, they mostly resembled the ancient Puebloan people. Sadly, by 1450, the Mogollon had all but vanished from Arizona. So it's hard to tell who the Mogollon are. They seem to have mixed in with the ancient Puebloan people. The Zuni of eastern Arizona and western New Mexico, however, claim to have Mogollon heritage. Neither Navajo nor Apache people are related to the Mogollon. So that's a very interesting story, is that a lot of Native American tribes can trace their ancestry very back far enough to when North America was discovered. But the Mogollon tribes seem to have been combined with the ancient Puebloan people and lost some of their heritage. So we don't really know exactly what happened, if it was mixed in with other heritage, but still a mystery to this day. All right, so let's talk about houses and the type of houses the ancient Arizona natives made. So the Navajo people have built hogans for many generations. Hogans are the houses. Navajo families usually had two hogans. One was called a male hogan. The other was called a female hogan. Each had a special use. The female hogan was very large. This was where the family lived. Remember, they have the women's sphere and the men's sphere, just in our culture, same as we do. This was where the family lived. It was warm, safe place to eat, sleep, and have fun, just like your home. The male hogan was smaller. It was used for special ceremonies. During the ceremonies, the men always sat on the south side and the women sat on the north, and visitors sat in the place of honor on the west. So think about what you know about the cardinal directions and how this sun sets, and think about if that makes any difference on where the Native people are placing their guest in the hut. Is there any significance to the direction that they're placed? Both hogans are built the same way to remind the Navajo people how important a family and their homeland are. The frame of the hogan is made of 4 posts. Each represents a sacred mountain. The walls are made of tree bark, mud, and sticks. The roof is made of earth. This makes the hogan warm in the winter and cool in the summer. The door of the hogan always faces east to welcome the morning sun and receive good blessings. Today, most Navajo live in modern homes, but many still have a male hogan in their yards to perform the ceremonies. These hogans do not look quite the same as the traditional hogans, made from mud and sticks. They still have 4 poles, but the walls are made of logs and lumber. This makes them more comfortable and easier to clean. Some Navajos still live in female hogans. The inside of the hogan looks much like a modern house. They have electricity, a refrigerator, sinks, a bathroom, couches, and a television. So that's interesting. Even modern day Native Americans still live with the same consistency that they had in ancient times. And it's a way to honor your culture and your heritage, to show respect and honor. All right. So now we're going to talk about the Navajo and the mountain natives. So the Navajo name should be familiar to you. It's a very common Indian tribe that most people associate with Native Americans in North America. So the Navajos is the largest in the United States, the largest tribe we have. They've lived in Arizona since they came from Canada hundreds of years ago. What is the House of the Badlands? It's the Casa Malpais Pueblo near Springville. It was built by the Mogollon people in the late 1200s on an extinct or no longer erupting volcano. It has dozens of stone rooms. One large room is called the kiva, and which is used for religious ceremonies. Under the floors are large crevices or holes that drop down as far as 50 feet. The Mogollon buried their dead in these holes. So kind of like we bury our dead, and we either cremate or we bury the body under the ground. Even the native people did this thousands and thousands of years ago. The most fascinating room in the tribes is the astronomy chamber. Along with making roof openings for nighttime stargazing, the Mogollon included a few small holes in the top. These holes let in rays of sun at specific times to shrines in certain places. For instance, some holes briefly lit up an important petroglyph or rock caving on both the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. The Diné, or the people. The Navajo people called themselves the Diné, which means the people. Centuries ago, a tribe with a language similar to the Navajos lived in northern New Mexico. Some became farmers and shepherders, while others were raiding nomads. The farmers and herdsmen eventually became the ancestors of today's Navajo. The others evolved into the Apache tribes of Arizona and New Mexico. A few hundred years ago, life was simple for the Navajo and Apache Indians. Then Columbus came, eventually followed by millions of other people from around the world. Many of these new people claimed the land and pushed the natives out. When the natives' homes were threatened, they tried to keep others out. This led to a lot of fighting between the Europeans and the natives. During the years 1863 and 1864, a large group of U.S. volunteers, under the direction of Colonel Kit Carson, captured more than 8,000 Navajo Indians. They were forced on a long walk, a 300-mile march to a reservation in New Mexico, where they were supposed to live with their enemies, the Apache. Many died along the way because of the cruelty of Kit Carson's men. In 1868, the Navajo were given their own large reservation in northeastern Arizona. This walk that they're referring to is called the Trail of Tears because of how many people died on the way there. Today, the Navajo Nation is the largest tribe in North America, and they produce more income than any other tribe. Many of them choose to live and work in cities and towns away from the reservation. Others prefer to remain on the reservation only. They want to remain with their own people, traditions, and culture. Can you think of any reasons why the Navajos would leave the reservation? Why would they want to stay? Think about that for a second. All right, the Apaches. So we talked about the Navajo, and now we're going to talk about the Apache, their enemies. The Apache are related to the Navajo and have a similar language. Historians think both tribes came as one group from Canada about 500 years ago, just like the Mogollon tribe. They eventually separated into two different tribes. When the Spaniards first came, the Apache lived in small bands in the mountains. Apache is a Yuma Indian word that means fighting men. No other tribe in the whole country was feared more than the Apaches. They didn't like outsiders coming into their territory, so they raided or surprised and attacked them. They were so sly and fast they were seldom caught. When they got horses from the Spaniards, they became expert bareback riders. The horses made them even more successful as warriors and raiders. They were able to go faster and travel longer distances. All right, so now we're going to talk about some of the Navajo crafts. The Navajos are greatly known for their weaving and jewelry. The women clipped wool from sheep, spun it into thread, and colored it with dyes made from roots, berries, plants, and dirt. They then wove these threads into rugs with beautiful designs. Because it takes so much time, most women don't make these rugs anymore, but some still do. Rug making is even taught as a class at Navajo Community College. Interesting. And it's a way to keep your heritage alive. Navajo men make wonderful silver jewelry. They began putting designs on silver more than 100 years ago. Later, they added turquoise and other stones to the silver. Their jewelry is now world famous. So I'm sure you've seen lots of pieces of jewelry with the turquoise stone in it, and a lot of that comes from the Navajo Nation. They're experts in jewelry making and working with silver and turquoise. All right. Let's see. Next, we're going to talk about World War II and what the Navajo Nation did to help out the United States during World War II. So imagine being a skilled secret communications agent for the top generals during World War II. Sounds like a pretty cushy job, at least interesting. You find out about all the battle plans before most generals and admirals. Only you know how to pass on secret code that no enemy in the world can understand. You feel proud to serve your country and do your part to help America remain free. How did you get so skilled? You grew up as a Navajo boy speaking the Navajo language. During World War II, many Navajos enlisted or signed up in the armed forces to help the government. Some of them were as young as 15 years old. They sent and received secret messages, such as battle plans and the positions of troops, subs, ships, and submarines. Our enemies could never understand the Navajo language, so they were never able to learn our military secrets. There was wind talkers, and there was code breakers. The Navajo Nation used their language to communicate back and forth with battalions in World War II, because no one outside of North America and the native population knew their language. So the enemy could not interpret or read our plans if they were written in Navajo, in the Navajo language. So they were a great asset to us during World War II. There's a lot of good books out there about the code breakers too, so look up the Navajo code breakers. All right, last thing I want to talk about is why we say Native Americans instead of American Indians. What's the difference and why is one preferred over the next? Well, some individuals and some entire tribes of American Indians prefer to be called Native Americans. They are offended by the name Indian because it was a mistake Christopher Columbus made. When he landed in America, he thought he had reached India. So he named the native people Indians. However, it is now considered correct to use the term American Indian to differentiate those in India from America's natives. Most everyone agrees that we are all proud to be called Americans. Even so, most American Indians like to be called by their tribal names. So American Indians or Native Americans are basically all the native people in North America. That's one big umbrella name. So most tribes tend to be called by their tribal names. So like the Navajo or the Cherokee or the Pueblo people, okay? So they like to go by their tribal name. All right, so I hope you guys had fun learning more about some of the native people of Arizona. We have such a rich culture, especially in Arizona and New Mexico over here. So I hope you enjoyed learning about some of that interesting native culture. So I have some questions for you. Now listen, guys, so this is exciting. I know we've talked about the gift card and how you can earn that. So if you are writing down my questions and you're showing me your answers in our Zoom academic meetings in the morning, you are going to be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So make sure you're answering these questions and you're showing up to our Zoom meetings and showing me so you can be in the running to win that gift card. It's a lot of money. Buy a lot of video games or books. All right, here are the questions. All right, so you're gonna write these down in your social studies or history notebook if you have one, or on a piece of paper. Okay, and then you're gonna show me your answers in our Zoom meeting on Friday. Okay, so every week you should be answering 2 sets of questions, one from the first video and one from the second video. And if you show up in our Zoom meetings and you show me twice weekly, then I will enter your name to win a $50 gift card. So make sure you're doing that. All right. Well, that's it for me today, guys. I will see you guys on our next Zoom meeting. All right. Bye.